Today's episode is called The Concept Cave, and it's a great one. I think I say that every time, but this is a real good opportunity to look at the idea of how we all have concepts and how they run our lives, and they call some shots, and how we can overcome them.
Great morning, world! Welcome to the Rise Up with Dragon podcast with your host, Dragon!
Great morning, world. This is your boy Dragon coming at you for the 1000th time. Took an assessment this morning of how long I've been doing this, and it's almost about 11, 12 years. So great morning, world. Welcome to another edition of the Rise Up with Dragon show / podcast / live stream. And just as a quick reminder, it's the goal of this podcast to remove the blindfolds of your programmed mind and widen your field of consciousness so that the full spectrum of your great potential becomes available to you, to gain access to that which is there. We will do this with our podcast, our weekly blog called The Dragon's Lair, one from the vault, and our upcoming online courses and books. One of those courses is the 15 Days of Discipline, almost done. Book is almost done as well. So welcome to another Rise Up with Dragon. Today's episode is called The Concept Cave, and it's a great one. I think I say that every time, but this is a real good opportunity to look at the idea of how we all have concepts and how they run our lives, and they call some shots, and how we can overcome them. Lot of exciting stuff coming. You know, Chicken and I are spending our morning routine recognizing the value of time. You know, we've been just talking about how long it took for us to get to where we're at in our relationship, and this place where, you know, we're really living our lives around things that matter most. And then also we just recognize today with a sense of gratitude that we've been working at getting our little girl here for almost 2 years. You know, we had plans on having her here, this little amazing creature that we're adopting. We had plans on having her here like right after the pandemic started. So what's cool about all of this stuff that I'm talking about, you know, the interface response system and just creating a different system of perceiving things, subtracting what it is that we've been programmed to see things and how we react, subtract that stuff and see things in a different way, holographically, as I talk about in the book. And handle adversity with grace, you know, flip a switch and recognize things don't happen to us. They think things happen for us. So here we are 2 years later, and, you know, we're getting ready in 1 month, in less than a month. We're counting the days now because we're leaving on December 1st at the time of this live taping, to go spend some time there, celebrate our wedding in Cape Town, South Africa. We're married, but we never had a wedding because of the whole pandemic. So we're excited about that, but we realize now that, like, we want to just push the proverbial fast forward button and just get right to that moment where we're on our plane, sitting next to each other, and we're flying her here in class. And that's when we'll know. So we recognize there, and this is, I guess, why I'm sharing this. We recognize there that, you know, it's like the whole "it ain't over till the fat lady sings," which is an opera reference, by the way, in case you didn't know that. But that's when we'll know. So we had this conversation this morning about time and urgency and expectations and stuff. And we're always looking to remove ourselves from the things that we can't control and expectations. So, you know, Chicken brought up this morning that she doesn't want to get her hopes up because we've experienced, you know, our past. If we look at this future with our daughter through the lens of the past, we've been riddled with letdowns, you know, whether it's a new rule about flying or a child and vaccinations and all that stuff. but then we shifted and we made a conscious decision that we're going to allow ourselves to get excited about it because it's exciting. It's an interesting shift when, and this will fit right into the concept cave, probably where it came from. But it's an interesting shift where you're trying to detach from outcomes in life because you don't want letdown, um, to then allowing yourself to get excited and not worry about the letdown. Like I made a conscious decision this morning, and I think all of us can do this, to get excited about something that I don't have a lot of control over and be okay if there's a letdown, but I'm going to get excited anyway. So it was an interesting distinction that we made, how we will, if you go too far with the whole detaching from expectations, you might not enjoy getting excited. And getting excited is fun. It's exciting. That's what I said to her. I go, it's exciting. So welcome to another edition of the Rise Up with Dragon podcast. And this is the Concept Cave. I want to give a couple shout outs. I just purchased, I don't know how many of you know this, but I'm actually went back to school and I'm studying to become a DJ. Dragon is very into electronic music and I want to create it, but I'm going to create a very unique line of it that is structured around personal growth and meditation and things like that. So I just bought, and I want to give a shout out to KMG, which is Keep Music Going. That is the music academy that I'm a student in, and my teacher. You can find him on Instagram at Bella Beats. And that is Drew Dugan. Drew is the master of this stuff. He's teaching me this program called Ableton, and Ableton is just amazing. If you want to get in the creative mode of creating music, I think music brings us into our future, and it makes us really emotionally engage in our future. So I want to create that. So I've got all the stuff. I've got Ableton Live, and I've got all my equipment and my DJ equipment. I bought a table, and I'm converting this whole area of my home into a DJ. But I also just bought this, and this is called the Launchpad by Novation. So if you look up YouTube, on YouTube or anything like that, you can see that people are just creating insane stuff. So I just unboxed this. I feel like this is like a YouTube video. I just unboxed this, and I'm going to start playing with it today. So maybe I'll share some of that stuff with you. So welcome to the Concept Cave. Let's get into it. So let's think for a second about concepts. I think everybody has some sort of a grasp on concepts. So, what are concepts, and do you have some? Do you have some concepts? Are you even aware of your concepts? Some people, I think, know that they have concepts, but when I say, what are your concepts, they have to think about it. I think the more you become self-aware, which is one of the biggest challenges that humans have, the more you become self-aware of your strengths and your weaknesses, the more conscious you'll be and more capable of making a shift. So what are concepts? Do you have some? And where did you get them? These are questions that I like to ask people. Did you create these concepts? So let's say you identify a concept about human beings or about politics or about life in general. Who created that concept? Did you create that concept? Did you actually go into the creative process and create that concept? Or was it a gift from someone or somewhere else? And now I talk a lot about our programmers, our mother, father, teacher, preacher, and now society, as we move into this metaverse world, which is crazy. I'm going to do a whole episode on that. And then also, once you identify these concepts, where they came from and whether or not you created them, are they serving you? That's an important question to ask. And as you'll see, provides the solution of how to get out of the concept cave. Is it's okay if we have concepts. I think we're always going to have concepts. I could have a concept that I don't have concepts, right? So it's okay to have concepts, but the question is the structure that you are working with, the vehicle that you are moving through life with, is it working? Is it serving you? If you can become self-aware enough and conscious enough to assess things that you believe in your heart and you stand for, but then all of a sudden take an inventory and say, but is it working? Is it serving me well? Is it moving the ball down the field? Oh, that's a big, big shift. If you want to stop this podcast at an early phase today, stop right there and just become self-aware of that. So do you have control over them, these concepts as well? Can you change them and begin to start controlling the next version of them? Think about that. Do we have control over them? Can we change? Like if I have a concept, can I rewire my brain and then also begin to control the next version, the next iteration of them in a way where I start to sculpt and craft my concepts to be more in support of my desired state and the things that matter most to me? So this is what I think I'm working on right now. I'm creating concepts. I'm actually manipulating and concept bending, right? I'm creating concepts that are in favor of what it is that I want. And then if you really step back and recognize it, it's like when you look at reality, and it's all a fantasy in my mind. Like you can create. I was in a clubhouse room with my friend Jules Loken this morning, and it was called Manifesting Your Destiny or something like that. And we were just talking about the fact that you get to create your reality. Working with the laws of the universe and all this stuff that I'm talking about. And it's a fantasy. So I did a whole episode on that called Dear Mr. Fantasy. You can go look at that. So all of these questions I have about, can we make those changes and all of that stuff? Well, I say you can if you have the ability, and this is a self-awareness thing, if you have the ability to close your eyes, because your eyes are for the most part working for your analytical mind. Your analytical mind is using your eyes to perceive things. It's already made a decision when you have a concept, but it's using your eyes to check on those concepts. So I always say that you're at an advantage when you have the ability to close your eyes and keep your mind wide open. And what I mean by keeping your mind wide open is the visual of that is to take like a floppy disk or a scan disk and take the little switch and make it writable, not write protected. So if you have concepts, your brain is in write protected mode. And, we talk as Susan Green, I think she talks about the idea of being rigid versus agile. So if you become open and writable, that's what I mean by that. So the answer is yes, and I welcome you to the Concept Cave, where we're going to talk about this stuff. So it's one thing to consider the fact that we have concepts that have been formed and sculpted by our life experiences, our mother, father, teacher, preacher, and also how we interpreted them. Interesting to go back and kind of blame our programmers or our life experience for playing a role in gifting us our concepts. But, as we look at the idea and we look at Jim Dethmer's work in 15 Laws of Conscious Leadership, he always refers to the fact that where you are in your state when you perceive these things has a lot to do with it. You're either above the line in full responsibility or you're below the line. So that's an interesting thing to look at, because how you interpreted these events play a big role in your concepts. And you can also start to create a cascade of concepts. If you develop one concept, it's kind of like that movie Inception. If I can drop a concept into your head and you buy into it and give it value, other concepts will jump on board, right? So that's interesting. So how you interpreted them. So it makes sense that our judgment and decision-making process could be skewed. So if we say, yeah, I have concepts, it makes sense that our judgment and decision-making process could be skewed and jaded by a mind that runs a program that only supports the things that it believes to be true. So think about some of the things that you believe to be true. Now, what's the goal of this and the whole concept of Rise Up a Dragon and interface response system and making sense of things? It's just to become aware of things. Because once you become aware of these things I'm talking about, it opens up the door for you to shift. Once you become aware of your drift, potential drift, it unveils the potential for a shift. So that's why I'm talking about these things. And that's why I say I like to remove the blindfolds. Sometimes when I remove your blindfolds and you actually see things and you become self-aware and conscious, sometimes you say, yeah, I'm good with that. but most people are sleepwalking through life. So even if logic proves different, we have a tendency to lock on and protect our position with our concepts. Think about that. Do you have any concepts that if you actually like fact checked and looked at logic or rationality, does your concept hold any water? Right? So it's one thing to say, is it helping me move forward? But sometimes we have belief systems that when we cross-reference mathematics and science, they're not real, and we still have this tendency to protect them. So that's interesting, and that leads to this concept of being in a concept cave. So this is why I've learned to forgive people, by the way, understanding that they know not what they do. So whenever I hear somebody share a concept or anything, even a core value or a principle that based on my, scientific mathematic mind, which could be bullshit as well. But when I hear someone share something, and this is important to learn how to interact with other people, when I hear someone share something that's just preposterous, I practice, this is part of the interface response system, forgiving them for they know not what they do. Now, I don't have to tell them that, but that's how I ease my mind about it, because my knee-jerk reaction is I want to tell them that they're wrong and I want to be right. And that's okay. That's the way we're wired. So here's my fascination. This is where my fascination for the concept cave came from. Right there is, how do we as humans have the ability, we've all got this ability to ignore rational logic? How do we do that? I had somebody share with me the other day a concept, a political concept that is just extraordinary. It's extraordinary. And I won't share what it is because you might have it, but there was like less than 1% rationale out of 100% that what they were saying could even be like, just human nature factoring in and everything. It's like, there's just no way something like that could exist. But I watched them buy into it 100%. That person's in a concept cave. So I want to, by the end of this, I'm hoping that somebody looks around and goes, oh shit, I'm in a concept cave. I found myself in that concept cave all the time, which is a great place to be when you identify it, because then you can see the light and maybe move out should you decide. We'll talk about that. So that's my fascination, is how we have the ability to ignore rational logic and facts and stand by our position on something, even when everything points to it being nuts. I'll share, and I won't share his name because he would be embarrassed at this point once he realized that he was in a concept cave. We're driving during the day and we look up, and that thing in the sky, that shining orb called the sun that you can't look at because it's so shiny and it provides heat. Well, my friend looked at it and he said it was a moon. And, sometimes you can see the moon during the daytime, but this was the sun. As you and I know, the sun, you look at it and you can't, right? So, and there's no crescent or anything like that, and it's hot, right? So anyway, this is way before I learned any of this stuff. And I just said, that's not the moon, that's the sun. And I kind of know that he looked at it and realized that it probably wasn't, but he stuck by it. And he says, no, that's the moon. So anyway, that's like somebody finding out that Target is called Target, which it's not, and just standing by it when like 99% of the world calls it Target, and you say, no, it's Target. So we have this amazing ability, and that's what I describe as the concept cave. Now, the concept cave is not just a place where we have concepts, because we all have concepts, but sometimes we find ourselves in a concept cave. So if you look at it this way, you see that not only do we have the ability to claim that we believe in things, but we can go against rationale, right? So that's the way I best describe this. Not only see that these people not only have the claim that they believe in their concepts, but they give the concepts a much higher value in creating the very essence of their safety. Now, a concept, just think about what a cave is. A cave It's kind of like this. If I'm looking around and I feel safe and secure based on my concepts and my principles, and that's kind of how I stay safe and secure. I guess this might be how somebody could stay in a bad relationship, right? Say we're working it out, but everybody knows that we're not. That's what I mean by the concept cave, because a cave by nature is not just a shelter, but it's shelter keeping you warm and protected and things like that. So when we build a cave out of our concepts, see the cave is not like made of rock; it's made of our concepts. And when we all of a sudden relate that that's our identity, we're in trouble. So I gave another analogy. It's similar to the blanket that you used to use to hide under when you were frightened as a kid. Do you remember that? Do you remember how you'd be scared of something, whether it's the monster in the closet or lightning or something like that, and you'd go under your blanket as if the blanket was going to protect you? Think about that in terms of concepts. The blanket doesn't actually protect us. Blocking the image and the concept, or blocking the image of the fearful thing, is what creates the perceived safety. So that's kind of what I mean by a concept cave. So why is this important? Well, for you, I think there's a lot of value in you identifying that you're in a concept cave, but in interacting with other people, and this is what I teach in the interface response system, if I can identify that somebody's locked into a concept cave, unless they've asked me for help, like, help, my structure's not working, can you help me? That's different. I might be able to guide them and say, well, you might be in a concept cave. But if I haven't been invited into to share my opinion, there's a lot of value in me taking a walk around a situation and say, this person's in a concept cave, because what it does is it releases me from the situation. One of the dangers in the way we interact with human beings is we very often put value on things that people say and we take it to heart. And that's when our stress response system, activates fight, flight, or freeze and things like that. That's what a lot of people experience, things like anxiety, depression, and frustration and confusion as a result of trying to control things that are out of their control. If somebody has concepts and they're in a concept cave and they're locked into it, you can't change that. You can't change that. Sometimes even if they've asked you to help them change it, it's very hard. Only they can change that. So you're in a concept cave. Here, this is how you know you're in a concept cave when you don't even want to listen to another point of view. Have you ever found yourself like that, where you're like, I'm sticking to my guns? And the worst feeling in the world is when you kind of know, once you allow your stress response system to take over and you lock into something and you defend your below the line, stance, what happens there is like, it feels like you feel like shit. You walk away from that conversation. It doesn't feel good to be closed. You might like the idea of feeling closed when you're in a protective mode and you're trying to protect your position, even if you know that it's wrong. I get that, but you don't walk away feeling good about that. I think what we feel a lot, it might be scary to think about it, but we feel a lot better when we're open. So, that's how you're in a concept cave, is when you don't even want to listen. So how do we break free from the concept cave? Here's what's interesting is we don't break free from the concept cave. Think about that. There's no breaking free from ourselves. I always find it funny how most people are telling me they have to get out of their own way. That's between you and you. So how could you get somebody else to help you get out of your own way? So we're not held prisoner in the cave. The moment that we see ourselves as a prisoner in the cave, that's when we're a prisoner in the cave. It's just the perception. It's kind of like the gateless gate, another podcast that I did. So the moment that we realize that the cave is created by us, we're no longer a prisoner. So it's not about breaking free from it. It's just about identifying what it is. That's why in the beginning, it's so important to become self-aware and just identify that you have concepts, whether you think they're right or not. Because of course, if you have a concept, you think it's right. So you're allowed to be right and still change your concept because you want to move forward. So that's the big win right there. Is it's not about being right or wrong. I meet people all the time that say to me, this is what I think and this is what I need to do. And I go, okay, let's look at that structure. Has that been working for you? It sounds good, but has it been working for you? And you go, no, I've been doing it for 3 years. It's not working for me. Okay, so are you open? Do you leave your options open to trying something else or to looking at it a different way, in support of this idea of moving the ball down the field? That's how you get out of the concept cave. So we're not held prisoner in the cave until we see ourselves as prisoners. This occurs when we're forced to look at our cave after becoming aware that things are not moving forward with our current structure and concepts. So that's the moment that you start to realize that it's time to leave the cave. You don't break free from the cave. You just leave the cave and you probably just move into another cave. But would you prefer to be in a concept cave or a concept cave full of concepts that are supporting you moving forward? It's fascinating to think about this. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying self-awareness and assessing your scenario. So it's a unique person. This is powerful. It's a unique person that has the ability to feel their concepts inevitably come on, meaning you're wired that way, just like emotions swallow us up. You're going to feel your concepts because you're wired to feel them. It's part of your program. But it's a unique person that can feel it come on and then, to some extent, make a decision to subtract their concepts from their scenario as the end all as the end all about things and how they are. If you have the ability to subtract that, like imagine saying, this is what is, but have the ability and the insight to subtract that from the equation so that you could be open to growth. That's the biggest challenge. That's why people get stuck in there. It's very hard to admit defeat. But what I'm sharing with you is it's not about admitting defeat. That's not what it's about. It's about moving forward. One of the things that I take a lot of pride in is I don't care who's right and who's wrong, me included. When I work with a client on a physical, mental, or financial journey, or all of them, that's the goal. Design thinking is the end goal is to win, whatever you decide a win is. So if I'm there to support you, I can't let my concepts enter and I can't judge your concepts. All I care about is you winning. And think about it. If your goal is to be happier, healthier, and wealthier and live your life around what matters most, who the hell cares how you get there as long as you're not doing wrong to other people, right? So that's what I'm about right now. And that's what this podcast is about. So next week, we're actually on Friday, timestamp. This is a Monday. Next week's episode is on rational versus irrational, and it delves deeper into this. So if you're into this sort of thing, you're going to like it. So this unique ability is very similar to doing hard work. We always have that conversation, like, where does success come from? Oh, it comes from doing the hard work and the heart work and things like that. When what it is that we want, what it is that we desire is important enough, we'll do whatever it takes to get it, right? So the idea of somebody says you just got to do the hard work, and you look at them and they, like, I get on the Peloton every morning and I follow my program and all that stuff. Yes, I have discipline and I teach people how to have discipline, but the first step to building discipline is having something that's worth practicing discipline for. So if you see someone doing the hard work, and it's hard work to release from your concepts, there's something on the other side of that hard work that warrants and creates value around that. So if the goal is to move the ball down the field and our concepts have been identified as a bag of stones on our shoulders as we try to move down the field, that's when we shift. So how do you catch your drift? Say, well, I'm trying to do X, Y, Z, and I've identified that I'm doing everything right except these concepts that I have. That's the idea of somebody not only saying they need to move out of their way. Moving out of your way means moving from rigid to agile, right? Susan David, that's her name. Emotional Agility, fantastic book. I'll tag it in the notes. So when I move from rigid to agile, I'm letting go of my concepts. I'm becoming open. As the and in Buddhism they call it neither here nor there. I don't care who's right. I just want to know how to move the ball down the field. I find myself doing this with my kids, especially now. I mean, we've got a new young one coming in, but my kids are getting older, so they have their own concepts, about everything. And all I want to do is be a good dad. So what I find myself saying to them sometimes is, how can I show up as the best possible dad possible? And they don't really have answers for it. They go, you're a good dad, And that's me saying, I don't care about what I think. I care about getting the job done. That's how you get out of the concept cave. Fascinating. So if the goal is to move the ball down the field and our concepts have been identified as a bag of rocks on our shoulders, we'll basically enact this unique subtraction and basically grab more logical and rational decision-making processes. That's the analogy of dropping the rocks. Is we'll go into this space, and that's what the interface response system talks about. We'll go into this space where we'll grab more logical and rational stuff, not our stuff. It's highly irrational to stick with your concept that's not working. Highly irrational. So we feel the concept. It's inevitable. We feel the concept. We practice this unique ability I was talking about. Feel the concept and then subtract it from the equation. Say, okay, thank you, but no thank you. In this week's blog, for those of you listening to it live, it came out today, but you can always go back to Rise Up with Dragon and click on blog and look it up. But in this week's blog, I shared one of my popular stories called The Little Liar, which is basically that voice of unreason. So you have a voice of reason, and then you have a voice of unreason. So basically, you're going to learn how to identify that voice in your head, which is really dictating and supporting the concept. Identify that it is the little liar and subtract it, right? So what I do when I hear the voice in my head that makes me worried about the day, that's something most people don't know, is I wake up very, very often in a state of panic and disarray, and I experience fear and stuff like that. I just have a structure. So one of the structures that I have is when I identify the voice in my head that's pitching the concept, I just say something like, thank you, noted, but no thank you. You are not needed. And, I've done a podcast called The Bouncer, where I talk about allowing things and people in or out. Say you're in, you're out. I do the same thing with my concepts and my voice. I hear them and I just say, I just evaluate, is this moving the ball down the field? Does this make the boat go faster, as my mentor Wayne Anderson says, or not? And that's how I delineate it, whether I think they're right or not. I just focus on the result. Why are there so few people at the top of the mountain? Because so few people are willing to practice this stuff, and the moment that we fail at practicing something, it's not a failure, but the moment we perceive that we fail, like it doesn't work, or you try something and you quit, that has nothing to do with whether or not what you were practicing, whether it worked or not. That's just you saying, I'm not ready. I'm not ready to go get this, because anybody can go win anytime they want, but it's going to require this. So go check out this week's blog on The Little Liar. So the concept and voice doesn't go away. This is how I'll close. The concept and the voice doesn't go away. Your emotions and thoughts in your program, it's who you are. It might change and evolve, but you're always going to be you. So the concept and the voice in your head doesn't go away. It rather starts to learn. If you notice that your little liar's not talking to you and you're dropping your concepts, they haven't gone away. They're actually waiting for their moment. But they're actually learning that their voice no longer applies, and they basically sit back and wait for you to experience an emotion triggered by something else that makes you feel like depressed or sad or frustrated, to try and come back in and give you an excuse to place blame on something and reestablish control over our brains. So that's an important thing to close on, is that concepts, once you break free from the concept cave, it doesn't disappear. It's waiting there for you. And it's very excited for you to return. It could show up in you being on a health program and making you, have a concept that you deserve a break today, which is why McDonald's uses that, and you have a donut when you move from eating like wild caught Atlantic salmon and kale and chia seeds, and then all of a sudden you have a donut. In that moment that you have the donut, that's your old program justifying it and welcome you back in the concept cave. Now you can jump right back out of it and catch yourself. If you're self-aware and you catch yourself, you can get right out of the concept cave. But if you fall prey to it again and again, all you're doing is you're just starting to set up camp again in the concept cave. So my advice to you is not to put so much pressure on yourself to like never have concepts again. We're always going to have concepts. Just evaluate, become self-aware of them, identify if they're helping the ball move down the field, because sometimes they do, most of the time they don't, and just start to do things in support of what you want. And then when the old concepts come back and you do something stupid that's off track, don't beat yourself up about it. Just get better at identifying it sooner so that you don't spend time in the concept cave. So it's like, have a one night stay, like make it a hotel rather than a week or a month or a year. So does this stuff make sense to you? So love and appreciate you all. Hope you're enjoying these. I think we're moving into the 70s of our podcast episodes. If you're not on our newsletter, go to riseupwithdragon.com, sign up for it. It comes every week. I'm putting a lot of work and effort into that. We've got some fun free stuff coming. Please go. If you haven't done so far, we've got a ton of people following this podcast now. Please go rate and review it. It really, really helps. And I've got some really, really fun stuff coming. So all of you dedicated fans that have been really interacting with me and giving me stuff, I got a lot of fun giveaways that are coming for you. And remember, we've got a clothing line coming. We've got NFTs. So as the Rise Up a Dragon podcast grows, you're going to be able to not only support it, but you're going to be able to invest in it and have some fun as well. So a lot of fun stuff on the horizon as we move into the metaverse. So love and appreciate you all. Have an amazing day.